Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's Better on Draft.
Welcome to this Black Friday episode of Better on Draft. My name is Ken. This is episode 246. Thank you so much for joining us on this holiday weekend. I hope you had a wonderful time socially distanced with your family, whether it was over Zoom, over phone calls, FaceTime, whatever you guys may use. I appreciate you all joining me. We have a great guest today. I've got so many bottles on my desk today, so I am going to start off actually with let's start off with the basics. So I've got a nice little bottle of Norden Aquavit. I actually didn't even open it until you got here. Now for me, I personally like Aquavit straight. Everyone calls me weird. I do prefer it a little bit chilled, but seeing as where we are, this is definitely more of a sipper for me. The reason I'm drinking Norden Aquavit is not because I went to some random place to get it. It's because of our guest today, Robyn Cleveland of Norden Aquavit. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
I have to ask the very first and I guess easy question because a lot of people probably don't know. It's episode 247, by the way, not 246. Anywho, what is Aquavit? Explain in the most, explain as long as you need to. But if I went to, what am I getting when I get an Aquavit?
So what you're getting is a traditional botanical spirit. Aquavit originates in Scandinavia. The history of the category goes back about 500 years, first written reference being in 1531. And it's a botanical spirit very similar to gin, and especially in how it's made. So it's basically a neutral spirit that's redistilled with botanicals, and those botanicals have to be either caraway and or dill. So gin is juniper, which has that sort of pininess, and then Aquavit is generally caraway, but it can also be made with dill, and caraway is going to possess more of a minty, kind of earthy, citrusy spice, and then the dill is going to be a bit sweeter. Both of them have a minty component to them. So yeah, it's really a light, refreshing botanical spirit, perfect for drinking straight or enjoying in cocktails. Ours in particular was developed to be more of a cocktail ingredient, but traditionally in Scandinavia, you sip this with beer. So really great show to be on here, beer show for the most part, and really happy to talk about it in a little more detail.
Now, before I bring in the other guests, I do want to ask just because I was able, the one place I went to, which was Zatuna Liquor over in Rochester Hills, just south of M59 on Rochester Road. Go check them out. Now, I wanted to get Aquavit from there, Norden Aquavit, but they didn't. But they had Long Road over there, which is another Michigan brand. Are there any other Aquavit makers in the state other than you?
No, it's just us and Long Road.
Okay. So
yeah, they were the first, and we were the second.
You were the second. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring in our co-host, one of our co-hosts, Dan. How you doing over there?
Hey, I'm not sure who you're about to bring in there, but I'm doing good.
Well, that's the order that we've been doing since we started this. Welcome. What are you drinking?
I'm actually double fisting. I got the old Dragon's Milk in one hand. I've got the Norden in the other hand.
How's that Norden tasting since it got shipped out to you?
It's good. It's good.
Well, I'll let you continue the interview.
Perfect. So, Robyn, first off, thanks for sending this out to me. I wouldn't have been able to get it out here otherwise because you're not distributed where I'm at. So my question is, I don't know if anyone else, although the hosts have, but I've spent a lot of time personally in Iceland, and I'm sure you're well aware of Brennivin. Very similar. Same taste, same type of liquor. Can you go into detail? Is there anything different between Brennivin and this? Are they the same thing, just using different names? I'm just kind of curiosity if you have any differences between them or if they're basically identical.
Yeah, so Brennivin, for those that don't know, actually literally translates into like burnt wine or brandy wine. It's sort of a catch-all term for distilled spirits in that region. Going back hundreds of years, and Aquavit sort of is too. So Aquavit it derives from the Latin aqua vitae, which means water of life. Many other distilled spirits, eau de vie, being one of them. Even whiskey derives its name from the water of life. So Brennivin is now sort of known as a brand, which actually is legally an aquavit from Iceland. So it's flavored with caraway. I'm not sure if it's flavored with anything else, but ours has 10 botanicals total. Caraway definitely leads the charge, but we wanted ours to be a bit more modern and versatile, not just for sipping, but for making cocktails. So it's caraway, then followed by clementine. We also have staghorn sumac, which is a native Michigan botanical. We use orris roots for sort of a floral note. Clary sage. It just says sage on the bottle, but this is clary sage that we're using, which is a bit more of a medicinal herb than a culinary herb. So it's got a really nice tropical fruit note and a pear note once it's distilled. And we use a touch of aniseed, angelica. That's a root of a flower. Gives it sort of an earthy sweetness on the finish. We do use a little bit of juniper, but not nearly enough to make it a gin. And then some dill for another element of sweetness, and then coriander for another strong citrus note. So ours is by design much more flavorful than sort of traditional aquavit. So we, on some of our bottles, which I think, Ken, you might have one that says traditionally crafted on it, right in the middle under the Norden Aquavit logo. Oh, you have a new bottle. Oh no, you have the barrel aged one too.
I got all 3 bottles here. So
okay.
The under it says traditionally crafted from grain
right.
spirits and select botanicals, and at the bottom it tells me anise, angelica, juniper, dill, and coriander.
So everything about that label is the same, except for we've changed it because before we had this label designed, we didn't know, or I'd say after we had the label designed, we ended up in Scandinavia actually, and we're in a symposium with 15 to 20 other aquavit distillers from throughout Scandinavia, and we realized our methods of production really aren't as traditional as we thought. So we changed it to exceptionally crafted traditional spirit. So, and the difference of our production process is that we employ a one-shot distillation. So that's a classical gin production style. And basically what we're doing is putting all the botanicals into the still and running it just one single time. And we don't add anything back to the spirit other than water to reduce it to final bottling proof. Most Scandinavian producers actually do individual distillates and in high concentrations and then blend that back into a neutral spirit. So it's more of a flavored vodka kind of approach, whereas we're doing more of a gin approach, and it really just lends to a softer, more intertwined flavor profile in the end.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to bring in actually our next co-host, guest co-host for this week, Matt Bush. Thank you so much for joining us. Nick had a healthy baby boy, so Matt is replacing Nick for the time being. Matt, how are you? What are you drinking over there?
So I did also find the Norden Aquavit. Yeah, this is a lot better than the stuff that you gave me that one time. It doesn't make me want to puke back in my mouth.
To catch up, Robyn, as well as the people who may be listening that are a little bit new, my travels at my previous job, I was going over to California and Seattle a bunch of times, and usually every time I come back, I was coming with a type of liquor from that area, and a few times I actually brought back a aquavit, including a dill aquavit that I have hanging downstairs, which is definitely dill heavy, and Matt was definitely not a fan of that. But Matt, what question do you got for Robyn over here?
So I went searching for the aquavit, thinking that it would be kind of in between the vodka gin section. I went to one of those high-end liquor stores where it's got the whole cage of liquors with the tags about, this is your vodka section and all that stuff. Yeah. And honestly, I couldn't find it. So I asked around, we finally found it as a team. Is that, clearly you want to sell, right? So you have a plan to break into a market and so on and so forth. Is there like a marketing plan, like a rollout that is planned for this? Maybe or maybe you just want to be kind of a fringe thing like a Jägermeister where people aren't, chasing it all the time. It's just something that's in their freezer, and then every now and again it's time for a schnapps. What's the kind of the future of aquavit, really?
Yeah, we think the future lies in really in cocktails and having bartenders and service industry folks introduce people to something new. My background is bartending. I spent 15 years behind the bar, most recently in Ann Arbor at The Last Word. So my wife and I, when we started this company, was originally, we actually originally looking into the concept of opening a bar that was going to focus solely on Scandinavian inspired food and heavily influenced by sort of the Northern European North Sea area, which is what both of our backgrounds are. So our business plan pretty much rolled out. The key marketing was really to educate bartenders, and then kind of work from there, do a lot of events, but we've had to pivot, of course. We only launched about a little over 2 years ago. So, this whole year has been really stunted, and we've had to switch things up a little bit. We've done some special releases. We've got the barrel age that we just released, which is a full-time addition to the lineup. And then we did this special limited Snaps edition. So, we're just going to continue to try to educate people as much as possible. I think the goal is to just make people aware of the category. It's never really enjoyed much of a status, like you were saying about, going to the store and not figuring out where it is. There is no Aquavit section. I've never been to any liquor store in the country that has one. But in general, we get lumped in with liqueurs and cordials. So that's even how we're listed in the liquor book in Michigan in particular. So I think, it's kind of good and bad. As a startup, as a sort of relatively niche category, even though it's got a rich history, I feel like if we were mixed in with gin or vodka, we would have a higher potential of kind of getting lost in there. Whereas when we're with liqueurs, I think that's our customer. So if somebody that's looking for that's maybe browsing for something a little more esoteric, they're going to maybe have a better chance of catching our label. And also it would be confusing. People still think I make gin all the time. So yeah, I would love to see the day that there's Aquavit behind every bar. And I would love to see the day that there's an Aquavit section in every liquor store. Maybe in my lifetime, it'll happen.
Matt, you're on mute.
Yeah, I've got mine over an ice ball too. It's neat. Well, I guess not neat, but it's straight. And it's like a grapefruit gin almost, really, I think is kind of what I'm getting is a grapefruit flavor. Any thought of canned cocktails with an Aquavit base, maybe?
We've had the discussions. My knee-jerk answer is no. I think we've already got so much education to just make people aware of the category and our brand. I think most people that see an Aquavit can, maybe if we had a really sweet name for it. But I think if someone saw like Aquavit and Tonic, they're going to go, what's that? Just as much as they would say, what the heck is Aquavit? So, I'm not going to say never, but it's not in the immediate plan.
I know someone on this panel has been making a cocktail with their Aquavit today. Wendy, how you doing?
I'm fantastic.
What did you make over there today?
So one of my favorite cocktails ever is a French 75. So I went online and found a Swedish 60, which is using Aquavit in replace the gin. I think it's delicious. I just used a sweetened lime juice instead of adding simple syrup in, so it's not as sweet. But I think it's really good. I also have it neat because I wanted to be able to taste it. And I was also read that you're supposed to drink it with beer, so I have a beer too.
Yeah.
It's been one of those days. My question is, what you talked a few times about the cocktails. What is your favorite cocktail to make with Aquavit?
So I have two, and they're not only my favorite, but they're my favorite ways to introduce it to people. Tonic being one of them. You really think of it like a gin substitute. I don't think it drinks like gin. It mixes like gin, but it doesn't taste like gin. So you can plug it into any gin recipe and really get an entirely new experience. So I think the not quite the classic gimlet, but more of the updated version of the gimlet with fresh lime juice and simple syrup. And then sometimes for fun, we throw in a little mint leaf into the shaker, which really accentuates the caraway notes. So that's one. And then tonic I like Fever Tree Mediterranean tonic. So it's a little less sweet and more on the botanical side. And both of those just really open up the flavors without without having to do too much to it. It's like both of them are really simple. Anybody can make them at home. Grapefruit juice is also a great addition. Grapefruit and caraway play extremely well together.
So I do have another question. I've in the reading and going over your website, I saw taffel style. I don't know if that's
Yes,
said right,
you
but
pronounced it correctly. Yep.
what is that? I'm new to this, so
Taffel means table. This style of aquavit is unique to Denmark. It's not a legally recognized category, but the loose definition, the commonly accepted definition of a taffel style would be unaged, heavy on the caraway, and generally a little bit higher proof. So 45% is usually sort of the ballpark, which is right at what we're bottled at. So the most famous aquavit in Denmark is called Aalborg, and that is just caraway and 45% unaged. That's the first aquavit I ever tried about 17 years ago. So it's sort of what I always thought aquavit is supposed to taste like. So we definitely have that strong caraway backbone, but we just added a little more to it.
And finally, you guys know him as the guy who does the news in the second episode of the week. BroBear, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Pretty much kind of rocking the favorite here, minus the mint, because I didn't have any mint. So I've got the aquavit with the simple syrup and the lime juice. I think I went a little too heavy on the syrup at the moment. So I'm just going to back that off with a little bit more aquavit.
That works.
And on top of that, got myself a can of Oddside Ales' Even OEO More, their Oreo stout. So I'm going to enjoy that in a bit. But I guess to start, a little bit earlier, you had mentioned that there were requirements for aquavit. And I know that there's always requirements for, gin and whiskey and bourbon. But I guess talk to us about what are the requirements that need to be met for aquavit to be aquavit?
Yeah, very good question. So depends where you are. In the U.S., we had caraway was the only thing. So the TTB, which sort of oversees regulatory stuff for spirits, that's the Tax and Trade Bureau. So you have to get your label approvals through, your formula approvals and everything. Until very recently, aquavit was defined as just a caraway flavored spirit. That was it. Earlier this year, it was expanded to be caraway and or dill to be a little bit more in line with the European Union definition. The European Union definition being what we follow. So we really wanted to be traditional in that sense. It definitely leaves you room for some interpretation to have your own style. We think of it like a German beer. You follow the German beer law. You can only use certain ingredients. Well, aquavit has to be flavored with caraway or dill, and it has to be done through distillation. So you cannot infuse caraway or dill into a spirit. It has to be distilled. There's a couple other rules. Proof, it cannot be below 37.5%. Let's see what else. There can't be more than 15 grams of sugar per liter. So that's to keep it out of the liqueur category. And you're also not allowed to use any overly bitter component. Sort of a loose definition, but basically it means not to be confused with the vast bitter liqueur categories throughout Europe. Scandinavia's got a really rich tradition of bitter liqueurs as well. I'm trying to think. It has to be of agricultural origin, the ethanol base. So you can use anything. It can be potatoes, can be wheat, corn, you name it. It just has to be agricultural. When I first read that, I was like, wasn't all stuff agricultural? But doing more research, I realized that you can actually extract ethanol from fossil fuel. During fossil fuel production, there's ethanol as a byproduct. So we're not drinking gasoline here. This is from organic corn.
All right, we're going to jump back to Wendy real quick. I believe she has a question about a particular aquavit that you guys made.
yeah, I was really bummed because I haven't been able to get my hands on the Norden Aquavit Pink that you released for Cancer Awareness Month. So I just wanted you to kind of tell us a little bit about what that is and how it came about.
Yeah, it's so we did a really limited release. It was Michigan only. It's the bottle here. the idea came about going back into the spring of this year. I met with a bartender from Detroit by the name of Melanie Mack, and Melanie and I were trying to think of ways to sort of collaborate on something, to whether it be an event or a product launch or something, to sort of give back to the community in a way. And she kind of pushed the idea of doing a pink aquavit. She said, have you ever thought about that? And I said, yeah, actually we have. And I tested a few. We ultimately decided we didn't want to add it as a permanent line extension. So she just sort of rekindled my interest in doing it. And we set out, the timing was such that strawberries were going to be one of the first things to come into season. I started playing around with some infusions of strawberry and to decide if that's the direction we were going to go. Then I realized the strawberry growing season in Michigan is extremely tight window. So it was like mid-June, and I started calling everybody I knew and said, who's got a line on some fresh strawberries? We need 250 pounds of them like tomorrow. And Sarah Welch, who's the chef at Marrow in Detroit, hooked me up with her distributor, and we got them delivered right away. We just dumped them straight into the original recipe. And then we got a bunch of rhubarb, some of which was grown at my mom's house in Ann Arbor. Dumped about 100 pounds of rhubarb in there, let that sit for about a month. And then we added hibiscus for color and some sort of balance, sweetness, a little bit of earthiness. And then the final addition was a vapor distillation of rose petals. So we did just a steam distillation. There was no ethanol. We just filled the still with basically reverse osmosis water, let the steam go through the rose petals, and then condensed it back and used that to cut the final product. Added a little bit of sugar, but it's still below the requirement, or it's below 15 grams per liter. So it's got some sweetness to it, but it's not overly sweet. And it was designed to mix with tonic or be a cocktail ingredient. We partnered with the Pink Fund. We reached out to them. They're a Michigan-based nonprofit. Really amazing work that they do. They do grants for folks that are in active treatment for breast cancer. It kind of helps with living expenses and kind of keeping them afloat during their treatment. So it's a 3-month grant program, and we're doing $4 for every bottle. And then we partnered with like 25 bars all around the state to do additional fundraising, whatever they decided to do. The suggested amount was $1 per cocktail, but we had a couple places do $2. It was a smash hit. We sold out in 4 days. We did 100 cases, 1,200 bottles. They're still floating around out there at some retailers, but everything on our end sold out, which is awesome.
I'm looking for it.
We do have a question directly from the chat real quick in regards to the pink bottle. And the question is that did they hear that the pink will not be made again?
It will be made again. It'll be made next year again for October. We'll do this every year. It was very successful. We want to keep on going with the partnership with the Pink Fund and support the work that they do as much as we can.
So as someone who, if you guys have been watching the video, which you can watch us live, betterondraft.tv or facebook.com/betterondraft, I can't get this damn bottle open. It's, the plastic continues to just spin.
It happens sometimes.
And spin. So I got to figure out, I might have to go grab a knife real quick to...
the best way to do it, this is an old bartender cheat because this used to happen to us with a few brands. It's not unique to this to this style, that's this kind of cap is called a Stelvin cap. Basically, there's little knots in there that keep the two attached. You can hit that with the knife end of a wine key. If you crack two or three of them, you should be able to get it open.
All right. Well,
sorry
maybe Julia can help you.
I know she might be listening downstairs, and she might pop up here, hopefully. But I'll let Rob continue.
All right. As you had already you just mentioned, and you mentioned earlier about being a bartender, and being a bartender and trying aquavit for the first time. I'm curious, what made that experience of having it the point where you kind of said, later on after leaving the bartending life, that this is what you want to make for starting really in Detroit and for the masses.
Yeah. So the first time I ever had it was when I was 21 years old on a 3-week trip to Denmark. One of my best friends growing up was born just north of Copenhagen, moved to the US when he was 5 years old, and we met in junior high. So I grew up in Berkeley, California. We went to school for a couple of years, and he left and actually lived in Japan for a little over a year, came back, and we kind of reconnected in high school. And then he went back to Denmark for college. So we were just floating around Europe for the summer. I spent 3 weeks there. I was given Aquavit sort of as a rite of passage, like, hey, if you're going to be in our country, you got to drink what we drink. They were kind of doing it as a sort of like a hazing thing. Younger generation doesn't think very highly of the category. It's kind of gotten a bad rap for being produced in sort of an industrial manner, really cheap, not high quality stuff. So I actually liked it. I was used to drinking like straight whiskey, probably like Old Crow or other nastier stuff. So I was like, hey, this actually has some flavor. Fast forward, I don't know, 2-3 years later, I'm living in New York and bartending. That's when I got my bartending start. There was a dusty old bottle under the bar I worked at in Brooklyn. And I didn't see it again until I moved to Michigan. And when I moved to Michigan, I started taking more of an interest in cocktails, and everybody was sort of racing to find new spirits to work with, to incorporate into your drinks. And the name of the game was really, for me, was to just introduce guests at the bar to exciting new experiences. So that's what got me really interested in learning about the history of it. And then my wife and I were talking about opening a bar ourselves, and we realized that there wasn't enough of this spirit available. There wasn't enough variety of it available in Michigan to really have that be the backbone of a concept. So it was really her idea. She said, why don't you could make one? Why don't you make one? And I thought she was crazy. I visited distilleries all over the world. We're very fortunate enough to do that. I've had an interest in making liqueurs and things like that, but I'd never distilled anything a day in my life. So it was sort of a daunting task, but it took about a year to develop it, and had some friends in the industry help us out tremendously here in Michigan. Great state for anybody that wants to get into distilling. There's a wealth of knowledge in the state. So we just did it. It took forever, but
right. And I mean, pretty much you guys started out. I know that you were making it in Detroit City Distillery down in East.
Yeah.
And I mean, since you have started there, like you said, you've been around for about, putting the product out for about 2 years. It basically was you and your wife Summer, and since then, now you've expanded to last year I saw that you had expanded to distribution in New York, in Chicago, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. Has there been, with that expansion going into those areas, has that expanded the staff, or is it just you just running around even more?
We have 2 part-time folks that work for us. So we have just recently brought back a brand, sort of a part-time brand rep in Chicago, and then hired a friend of mine I used to work with, David Martinez, Detroit bartender. He's doing some part-time work for us in the Detroit area, so I can focus more on distilling and actually expanding into other markets. But it has mostly been me. My wife still has a full-time job, so I do all the relationships with distributors. I do all the production. I'm not bottling every bottle, but until recently, I was there on bottling day, working the bottling line. So.
I will say for that, you could take a page out of 2 James and just reach out to people on Instagram, have them bottle for about 6 hours, and take a free bottle home after the day.
Right.
That might actually help grow the brand, and people would know the awareness is, hey, we're giving away free liquor to anybody who comes and bottles with us. All that Instagram stuff goes viral, and people love it.
Yeah. We can't do any of that right now under the current conditions, but for the future, I'll definitely entertain that. We've got a really good relationship now. We've moved out of DCD, so we're no longer in Detroit now. We're in Chelsea, working actually out of the Ugly Dog Distillery there. And we have a production relationship with them where I do all of the actual distilling. I prep all the botanicals, I run the still, and they handle all the labeling, bottling, and packaging for distribution. So it's taken a huge weight off my shoulders. I'm there for setup, but I don't need to be hand cranking every label on anymore.
Right. Now, and I know we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but as a drink that uses botanical spirits, usually the first thing people think of when they hear botanicals is that they think gin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are people who don't like gin, and when they hear that, they think into that similar area. So I guess talk to people who don't like gin in how they would actually like Aquavit.
Yeah, we get that a lot. So, before COVID, I was still doing a lot of on-site tasting events, at party stores, liquor stores. I'd get people coming up and go, "Oh, what is that?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's Aquavit. Have you ever had Aquavit?" And they said, "I've never even heard of it." Well, it's kind of like gin. They go, "Oh no, well, it's kind of like gin how it's made. Doesn't taste like gin." And then they'll sip it and they'll go, "Oh, this is actually really nice." It's more of a minty spice. You think about like a rye bread with caraway seeds in it, and that's sort of an easy way for us to describe what people are going to expect. But then there's also such a strong citrus note, especially on the aroma, that it kind of eases people into it. So they'll smell that citrus and they'll go, "Okay, this isn't that pine tree." That's usually what people don't like about gin. They think it tastes like pine trees. They're like, "Oh, this is like Christmas. I don't want to drink that." So I think this is an easier. I'm honestly shocked that Aquavit hasn't taken off more in the past, because I think overall, at least the reception for ours is that gin drinkers love it because it's similar, but gin haters enjoy it because it's different enough. Kind of get the best of both worlds.
As long as it's different enough.
Yeah.
This one is going to be a little bit more general, because I know you had talked about the idea of in doing cocktails, but obviously, as everybody knows, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and there have been some positive changes in the alcohol industry, from allowing delivery service to curbside pickup and outside seating. I know with being down in Eastern Market and hosting trivia down there, that when DCD had the whole block blocked off, that there was a good set of clientele that was coming in. But here we are in the winter months, and things have pretty much kind of gone to the wayside because it's just getting it's too cold in the D, as most would go for that song.
Yeah.
It's so cold in the D.
Cold.
Whatever, Matt. Shut up. Now, obviously with us hitting those months and the outdoors being very difficult to manage, I guess from your standpoint, is there anything that you'd like to see help sales and the industry going forward as we start to go through this winter and hopefully make it to the spring, manageably unscathed?
Yeah, I mean, bars and restaurants in general need more help from our government, but we're not going to get into politics too much, like we said in the beginning. But I think one thing that would be awesome from a distiller's point of view is the ability to have parity with beer and wine producers. We are not currently allowed to self-distribute in any way, shape, or form. So Michigan beer brewers, wineries, they're all allowed to sell directly to bars and restaurants. They're allowed to sell directly to stores up to a certain level, and that's all we want. And I think that from a small startup perspective, that would be huge. That would allow us to build our brand, we could have more jobs, so many positives that could come out of it. And I think it's a good stepping stone. You're not going to be able to manage distribution, probably not in an entire state on your own. So you're going to need the distributor eventually, but it's such a good building block for a small startup to be able to at least have some level of self-distribution. So I know that there's been some legislation introduced for that to be able to happen. I have no idea where it stands right now, but we managed to get cocktails and alcohol to go passed. So I'm hopeful we can get a little love for our Michigan distillers too.
So I don't think we ever talked about liquor distribution. So I've been to DCD and bought liquor from DCD. So is that
Yep.
the on truck, off truck kind of situation where they have to sell it to the distributor just to buy it back from them to then turn around and
They can sell out of their tasting room. So
yes, down in Eastern Market, like we were talking.
Yeah, so they
without a distributor or with
no distributor, but as soon as it leaves the property, that has to go through a distributor. So they can't do any kind of deliveries. Though you can deliver cocktails now. So distilleries got granted the ability to do that along with bars and restaurants with that pass back in the summertime. They could make cocktails and they could, I think you could package alcohol, but I'm not 100% sure if they're allowed to do that for delivery. They definitely can't mail anything, and they can't sell direct to a bar or restaurant legit.
So maybe you need to leave Chelsea where there's like no people and come back to Metro Detroit where there's a lot of people. Is that kind of what I'm getting? Or maybe,
we don't own the distillery, so we just started selling some bottles on the shelf there. But in the past, we don't have our own tasting room in the sense that you could come in and you're sitting down at a bar and the bartender is a Norden Spirits employee, and we're serving Norden Spirits in our drinks. So the distillery in Chelsea, when you're sitting at the bar, you're only drinking Ugly Dog stuff. If you want to have a sample of what we make, you're welcome to, and you can buy a bottle, but we don't have anything really to do with that business side of things. We're pretty much strictly in distribution for the time being. It's not to say that we won't have our own facility one day, or even our own tasting room that's licensed from Ugly Dog, but that's probably a year plus down the road. Even if we decide to make that decision, if we made that decision tomorrow, it'd take a long time to get the logistics worked out.
Well, if you need commercial space, let me know.
Okay. All right.
Dan, what about you? You're a little quiet over there.
I am. So spirits totally aren't my thing. I'm a vodka drinker only, for the most part, as far as it comes to spirits. What would you say to someone like me? Like, I walk in or I see this, you're trying to sell it to me. I'm like, I'd rather have like a vodka soda. What would you direct me towards as far as trying this? Would I want to mix this? Would I want to do it straight? What are your
I'd say mix it with soda. One of my best friends loves just mixing it with soda and a little squeeze of lemon or lime. It doesn't need much. The whole idea with this is that there is a lot of flavor, but it's not. It has some natural sweetness. So when we're talking about mixing that gimlet earlier, went a little bit too heavy on the sugar, right? So you don't need a lot. So I think just a little bit of soda is great. Drinking it neat is very traditional and an awesome way to enjoy it. But to each their own. Not everybody loves all the same things, so we can't convert everybody.
Dan, do you ever put like a flavored like soda or flavored tonic with your vodka?
So a lot of people I know like to make vodkas, taking the White Claw and mixing vodka.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was thinking, as a hard seltzer, especially
and that might not be a bad idea.
I have a super hard seltzer here.
What? A
super seltzer. So I mixed it with this stuff called Press. It's a grapefruit seltzer. Grapefruit and cardamom.
Grapefruit cardamom. That sounds awesome.
And this caraway. This is really awesome. So a super seltzer. But Dan, do you think
Where'd you get that?
What's that?
The Press.
At where I got the Aquavit. I'll just say it's from Zatuna Liquor because I'm sure you can find it there as well. And I don't want to give anybody a free plug. But my thought is, Dan, do you think you could substitute your Bloody Mary vodka for something like this caraway? Because it kind of feels like it's got that earthiness that would go with the celery salt or the garlic or the tomato base. And I don't think you would notice much of a difference.
I actually thought about that earlier. I'm actually thinking about trying that now because I thought about that actually before the start of the show, but I didn't want to drink it without trying it on its own beforehand. But I think it's definitely something you could put into a Bloody Mary.
I highly recommend that. It is good.
Bill Carney in the chat was what I was thinking, mixing it with the seltzer, and that's doing Odd Sides cucumber seltzer, because I think that cucumber seltzer with this the standard Norden. Now I'm onto the barrel aged Norden, and this A lot of this stuff has definitely got a lot of like heat in the chest when it goes down, especially because I'm drinking it straight. I'm not drinking it over ice or anything. What about mixing? Um, you like what about mixing drinks? Because you were a bartender. Like, what about mixing drinks helps you get in touch with the customer? Because the customer comes in and 98% of the time they're like, oh, I want a whiskey and coke or a gin and tonic or a one and one, as I always use in the industry.
Yeah.
But when you're making cocktails like places like Kiesling does, where they're making some of the most extreme, ridiculous cocktails, and they all taste so good, and you wonder how they're selling them for so cheap too. How do you go from someone that says I like vodka to understanding what kind of cocktail you're going to sell them?
My number one question as a bartender to understand what kind of cocktail they might like is actually rather unexpected. Whenever I tell people this, I ask them what they don't like. The first, I say, what's one thing that you just do not want? And that kind of helps me eliminate a couple of ideas right out of the gate. And then we say, if you are enjoying a cocktail, what do you gravitate towards? Are you a bitter and stirred Manhattan drinker, or are you, the more vodka soda type? And you can, if you've been bartending long enough, you can kind of dig into your bag of tools, into your repertoire. You look to all the classics and just sort of insert Aquavit into one of those classic builds. So gin is 9 times out of 10 where we go, but you can use it as a substitute for vodka in just about any vodka recipe too. We're basically drinking a flavored vodka when it all comes down to it. So it's a neutral corn spirit. So it's essentially Tito's. That's all Tito's is neutral corn spirit.
Watch out, you'll get a C&D.
Right. But we've distilled botanicals into it. So I don't know. I think every customer is different. So you really just need to get a sense for what they like. I don't think there's a blanket like this is the drink that is going to get you to be an Aquavit lover.
Well, what about you? When you're going to a bar, what are you ordering personally?
These days I'm usually ordering a Norden cocktail because I want to support accounts that support us. But for years and years, and I still am a huge rum fan. So I love daiquiris. So if I'm not drinking Aquavit, I'm generally drinking rum. I've had my love affair with American whiskey. That's sort of passed. But that was real big for a little while. And I learned a heck of a lot about bourbon and rye. And I got to visit a lot of distilleries in Kentucky, and I still have a deep appreciation for it. It's just not something that I enjoy as much anymore.
So guys, just so you know, I'm really good at these because our webmaster, which we are launching a new website before the end of the year, and I am so excited to have it. Our webmaster, who is building it, Bill, is actually a professional rum taster. And he took your tiki making and spirits tasting class at Last World a while back, and you actually were able to locate a specific rum for him called Foursquare.
Yep. How's it going, Bill?
He was excited to hear from you. He actually, after he had met you, and he forwarded me the email earlier today, he's like, you need to have this guy on your show. And I know you
awesome.
And I have been playing email tag for the past couple of years because I had met you at the Golden Jigger Awards in 2018.
Yeah.
Over at I can't remember the name of the bar in Detroit.
That was at Willis Show Bar.
Willis Show Bar, right? Correct. I think you took home a prize too, didn't you? There.
We did. We got the best Michigan brand launch of 2018. So that was a very amazing experience. It ended up being a room full of old friends, bartender community, and got an overwhelming round of applause, and I just almost started crying. It was awesome. I think I've just blacked out giving an acceptance speech.
Well, time has flown. It's been 45 minutes. I'm going to kind of go around the horn. We're going to all ask you one final question,
Cool.
And kind of make sure we plug to see where you can get it, where you can get your Aquavit. So we're going to start with Matt Bush over there. Matt, what last question can you ask Mr. Robyn here?
Yeah, so I know that you're in a traditional style of beverage with strict laws. do you want to keep staying strict to that, or maybe branch off into one-offs that could maybe bring people into your orbit? Like, I honestly think that if you had like a grapefruit aquavit, it would be maybe more not appealing, but it would catch people's eyes because people always look for like spirits. So do you think that if you had like a grapefruit aquavit, a ginger aquavit, a cinnamon aquavit, that you could bring the people to the aquavit category, and you could then use just the standard Norden as your flagship while bringing people with non-traditional ways? Or do you just want to be fully, full on Viking, nothing off the
Yeah,
island?
I mean, we're committed to growing the category, and I think that doing too many flavors starts to get a little confusing. And I love the tradition of this category. I love the rules that are in place, and there's still plenty of wiggle room to be creative. Like this pink aquavit that's flavored with rhubarb and strawberry and damask rose and hibiscus. This is still legally an aquavit. So this is a one-off. This brought a lot of people kind of into our realm. I think when we launched, we got more attention for this than anything we'd done with the classics. And I think mostly because this was really geared towards being more of a retail launch. So, I'm not opposed to doing some limited release things here and there, but I want people to appreciate aquavit for what aquavit is first before we start messing around with too many variables.
Well, that pink stuff is what I'm drinking right now, and I could probably just take a glass of it, add ice, and just drink that for an entire night, and just
it's
be
dangerous.
happy with that too. Yeah, it's one of those liquors because I don't know what I saw, if I saw the proof on it too, but I'm guessing it's around the
a little lower. It's 76 proof, 38%.
Okay, so it's a little bit lower than your others. But Robyns, what final question do you have, Robyn? What final question do you have for Robyn here? There we go.
All right, one quick thing with Matt on that one, and doing the other flavors, kind of agreeing with Robyn on that one, is like that's one of the reasons why I don't touch anything like Smirnoff, because I'm tired of seeing 16 different variations of vodka when I want to flavor them myself. So that's just kind of me on that. But in a previous interview, you had talked about, obviously, and you talked here about opening up your own place. And at the time, you had talked about opening a place here in Detroit. I think I'm the only one in here who could say I'm actually in Detroit, so I would just stick with that. Is that still kind of the key? Like, once you get to that point where you can open up your own place, do you want to still come to Detroit? Or I know that Ann Arbor for you is closer, but is Detroit still the place where you want to call home for your place?
I would love to return to Detroit. I enjoy Detroit immensely, and having not grown up here, and I've lived in the area for 12 years. I bartended in Ann Arbor, so I think I have more of a personal connection to Ann Arbor, but I have more of a professional connection to Detroit. And I helped found the Detroit Bartenders Guild back in 2012, and I've been embraced by that community so much. And like, we've had so much support from the bar community for our brand that I think I would love to call that home. I don't know if it's realistic to say where we would be anywhere at this point. Ann Arbor's definitely appealing, but Ann Arbor's also very expensive, as anybody that pays rent there knows. I think we could probably have a better shot at it in Detroit. Maybe we do both. Who's to say that you can have tasting rooms all over the state now with the change in the law. So
like St. Clair Shores.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I'd love to be up north too. It's like wherever I want to be, let's have a tasting room there.
I mean, I would like to, for what has been coming a up and coming area with Eastern Market, and having DCD, Eastern Market Brewing, Lager House 5, that I think would be really cool to just kind of add on to that area and make a nice, bar district over there.
Oh, it'd be sweet. I love Eastern Market. I could spend all day and all night there. Honestly, it's great. And like, being able to just get fresh produce from the market and do fun stuff with it. Like DCD does such a great job with their tasting room. Like, yeah, there's definitely room for more fun to be had down there for sure.
Yeah.
Wendy.
I want him to come to Garden City. We got nothing over here like that. I'm in the craft beer wasteland. So I'm just saying. My question is, you are a double gold winner at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what that was like, and I guess kind of how cool it feels.
Oh my God, it was amazing. So we entered that as when we launched. It was the only competition we could afford to enter. When we decided, there are many that you can enter. Anybody that goes to the store and looks at all the neck hangers on all the bottles, everybody's got a gold this or 96 point that. But the San Francisco World Spirits Competition is sort of the benchmark, and it's the most highly regarded one. And we figured, if we're going to do one, let's just shoot for the moon. And, we packed up 2 bottles, paid our entry fee, and just waited. It's all done blind in over the course of 2 or 3 days. There's something like 30 judges from across the country that all descend upon this one hotel in San Francisco, and they get there to everybody's in a sterile room environment. Everybody has to wear these robes, and it's so intense. We see some behind the scenes photos of it. But we had no idea. We're completely blind. We don't know what's going on. So we just wait to hear back. And I was out raking leaves. This was in the spring. So I live on 5 acres. We have tons of trees, and whatever we get in the fall, whatever we don't get in the fall, we have to take care of in the spring. So I'm doing the last little bit of leaves and burning them in a little burn pile. I sat down to take a little break and just flip my phone open. I didn't actually flip it. I don't have a flip phone, but I opened up my email. And I saw the email, and I just started scrolling down, and there it was, double gold, best in class. So we got best aquavit, double gold, which means unanimous gold recommendation from every blind taster on the panel. And I just started freaking out. I just started yelling and ran to the house, and my wife thought I was on fire from the burn pile. And I just was like, we did it. We got double gold. This is crazy. And then later in the day, I got an email from a friend. He said, I'm reading Fred Minnick. He did a piece in Forbes all about the tasting at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. And this is something that we weren't notified of at all, but he was kind of explaining the whole process. And we were in the running for best in show. We got second place. You don't get a medal for that, but we were second place for best in show for the whole entire thing, which is just nuts. So still have to pinch myself sometimes when I see that hanging on the bottle. It's awesome.
It's awesome.
Dan.
Yes. First off, Wendy, I can't believe you're complaining when Garden City had gems like Ramey's for all those years hanging out back in the day. So Robyn, my question is, what are your plans on expanding as far as distribution goes? Any plans to move further west, further south, anything like that based on where you're at right now? Or are you holding steady for the time being?
We'd like to be everywhere. We have to do it really gradually. The margins in distribution are pretty slim. The further you go while you're managing it yourself, the harder it becomes to, everything gets more expensive as far as shipping goes. So, it'll probably be a situation where if we expand too much further out of sort of our Midwest region, it'll come in the way of a partnership with somebody that's got more of a handle on how to manage logistics. Right now, I'm managing everything. But it's relatively easy because we have one distributor that works in 4 states for us. And then Michigan, home base, that's easy. Then we're in Ohio and Chicago. We're in Illinois. So we're looking close to home. I think we'd like to be in Minnesota, which is really a hotbed for aquavit. A lot of Scandinavian folks live in Minnesota. So there's less education for us. So yeah, we're not opposed to anything. I'm from California. I'd love to be distributed in California. I'd love to be everywhere. And I think we'll get there eventually. Just gotta do it right.
Is there a state currently in the U.S. that would be a aquavit heaven? What state do people more know Aquavit or more know or have better
Yeah.
not better options, more options? Because I think what you're lacking here in Michigan, and I think you touched on it a few times, is that the lack of competition, people may not necessarily want to try you. But if I look and I see that there's 10 different Aquavits, I see, Long Road makes theirs, and Supernatural makes one, and Hopland Distillery makes one, and all these other distilleries start making an Aquavit, I think people will be like, oh, well, now I'm inclined to try one or try two or try three.
Yeah.
Kind of like what breweries are. Breweries, everyone's able to help each other out because as much as your competition, I'm, more likely to go try another brewery that comes out as opposed to just going to the same one. So I think, where in the U.S. can we look to see like a Aquavit heaven that we could, um, learn from?
Yeah, so Minnesota is definitely up there as far as the understanding and appreciation of it. You're going to find more made in the state than probably anywhere else other than, I'd say, the other hotbed would be the Pacific Northwest. So Portland and Seattle in particular have a pretty heavy appreciation for it. Distribution-wise, as far as variety, New York has tons of variety. Chicago has a fair amount of variety, because they're both very open states as far as distribution goes. And then California has a pretty good variety too. And then also a lot of smaller producers are starting to make it. So yeah, I think I always say there's no market to fight over yet. So we have to kind of create a market. All of us Aquavit producers. The big thing for me is to really align ourselves, if we're going to align ourselves with anybody, to do it with folks that are doing it right. I think Aquavit, because it's not really regulated in the U.S. There's a lot of people trying their hand out of it, but not necessarily kind of sticking to the formula. There's a few in Canada. I'm not going to name names, but there's one that doesn't even put caraway or dill in theirs, and they call it an Aquavit. And like, how can you do that? So, I want the category to blossom and people to really have a good understanding of it. And it's hard to do that when there's people kind of not sticking to the rules.
And one final takeaway before I give you the opportunity to plug all your socials and, of course, your website, which has a Aquavit Finder on there so people can figure out where they can go. What is the biggest misconception about Aquavit?
It was a Viking drink.
Okay.
Vikings and distillation don't have an overlap. So the Viking era ended. Vikings loved beer, brewed things, wine, mead. They were not distilling. So we see a lot of branding for different aquavits that incorporate Viking stuff. You're not going to escape it. I think anybody thinks of Scandinavia, they think of Vikings. There's tons of cocktails that use Norden in it that have Viking themes, but that's a very common misconception. It's not a Viking thing.
All right, that's going to do it. They can find you on Facebook, Norden Aquavit, Instagram, Norden Aquavit. What is your website for everyone to go find the Norden Aquavit Finder so that they can go look for it themselves?
Yeah, it's nordenaqavit.com. You can go down to the bottom of the page. It says where to buy. We try to keep that as updated as we can, but I always recommend calling ahead of time just to verify stock.
And of course, you guys are distilling out of Ugly Dog Distillery in Chelsea, which you can buy it off the shelf. That's where I got these two lovely bottles myself. I was actually able to get the other one, as well as I was able to get everyone else the other one over at Bush's. So shout out to them because they had a bunch of bottles, and I appreciate it when a store can help me. That's gonna do it. Better on Draft Podcast 247, guys. You can listen to us every Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Next week we got Toppling Goliath in studio, so you can join us for that Decatur, Iowa. I think it's Decatur, Iowa brewery. BetterOnDraft.tv, Decatur, yeah. Facebook.com/BetterOnDraft. Whatever. YouTube.com/BetterOnDraft. Twitch.tv/BodPodcast. Of course, you can find us on all the social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, Better on Draft. You can see all the drinks that we drank, all the beers that we drank. Not going to be much this episode, that's for sure. That is on Untapped, BODPODCAST. Robyn Cleveland, Norden Aquavit. Thank you so much for for joining us. That is going to do it for 247. A couple days we're going to be launching the news, which is going to be recorded tonight. Of course, you can listen to it live, and no matter what you think of your beer, we think it's better on draft. Have a good night.
Cheers, guys. Thanks so much.